locality, specifically for business. We did one first in Mitchell County, and then we did one for Hancock and Winnebago County, and they were well attended by businesses there. Businesses are interested in this. This is a situation that's changing as we speak. It's like the earth is moving under our feet. That is, the American perception of marijuana, where does that fit in our culture, is changing dramatically. And it's kind of interesting for me as a prevention specialist, and I'm a prevention specialist at Prairie Addiction Treatment Services. I find it very interesting. I'm not disturbed by it. I'm not surprised by it. I just find it very interesting. And here's the part that gets me. Now, this is a gentleman who is an aeronautical engineer. I put that into my computer. And he's checking this blades on in a jet engine. Now, how many of you have flown commercially in the last year? Okay, so you're at what, 35,000 feet? You know, so we're right, almost 6-7 miles in the air, and that thing is spinning at some, unbelievable RPM. But we're not concerned. We're not concerned because that guy is an expert. Now, what if the strength of the blades in your jet engine had been checked out by that guy? Now, he's an expert on what he's doing, but in our culture, we don't listen to the opinions of people who are not experts when it comes to issues that have the potential for affecting the health and safety of millions of people. We only listen to the opinions of experts, except on this one issue of marijuana. I spoke to a legislator here in North Iowa, and he said to me, and these were his words exactly, it's unfair. He says it's unfair to ask us to make these decisions because we really only listen to the opinions of experts. This is, and of course this is on the opinion page, so you can't be wrong about an opinion, right? But this person, and this is one of the mothers who has a child that has a severe epilepsy called Dravet syndrome, and she said that those in need get the relief that the medicine is proven to provide. Okay. Proven to provide. Now, this is on the opinion page. I sat next to that person, Dr. Josie, and she is an expert, a world-recognized expert in childhood epilepsy at the University of Iowa. And she said there are absolutely no double-blind studies of the efficacy of cannabidiol, that is, and you hear it referred to as marijuana oil or whatever. She said, not one, and that is the way pharmaceuticals are vetted, if you will. That's the way we determine if they're efficacious or not. Double-blind study. That is, I may or may not be getting the drug, and the doctor that prescribes it doesn't know whether I am or not. Double-blind. There's not one double-blind study on the efficacy of cannabidiol, and yet we can read this in the paper, proven to provide. So that could be confusing, couldn't it? That could be very confusing. Here's the thing. This is happening. This is not a photoshopped anything. You've probably seen this. This was Newsweek magazine, the new pot barons. Here's Time magazine, Is America Going to Pot? And this one, I love this, the United States of Marijuana. The United States of Marijuana. This is, and this didn't happen over decades and decades and decades. This has happened over the last 5 or 6 years. So, what I wonder is, and what I would like to accomplish today is, who is making this happen? Who's making this happen? I mean, sometimes people think, there's a lot of pro-marijuana people out there. Do you think these people are influencing our entire culture? No, thank you for your candor, right. Right, exactly. No, probably not, okay? And these people are not keeping it from happening. This is I guess we'd have to say an anti-marijuana demonstration. You'll love it. I Googled pro-marijuana demonstration, hundreds of thousands of images, right? I Googled anti-marijuana demonstration, one. This is it. Well, obviously they're not keeping it from happening. So what I'm suggesting here, and let's go over, and there's no meaning to this, but let's over on the left here. Okay, these are the pro people. And I am suggesting, and I think you're agreeing with me, they're not making this happen, right? And over here, these are the antis, and they're not keeping it from happening. Now, sometimes people say, well, there's just a few really rich people that are pushing this agenda. And here are some of them. This is Paul Boucher is a programmer, computer programmer. He, if you use Gmail, that was Paul's idea. And he is now, not surprisingly, extremely wealthy. And he's a big supporter of liberalizing marijuana laws. George Soros is a financier and philanthropist. George Zimmer is Men's Warehouse. He owns the Men's, or did own, he was the CEO. And Peter Lewis, now Peter is not with us anymore, but he started Progressive Insurance. This is Flo's dad. And John Sperling was the University of Phoenix, or is the University of Phoenix, came up with that concept. And they're all billionaires. And when I say contributors too, they have contributed to liberalizing marijuana laws in the millions of dollars, each one of them millions of dollars spent on that. But I would like to hope that in this country, in the states that ask their legislature to make a decision, the legislature hopefully still can't be bought. And in the states where they use the referendum, like in Washington, well, that's the public voting on this. And I'm thinking, even with those guys with their millions of dollars, every voter didn't get a check in the mail. So I'm going to put them over here. These are rich, and I'm going to put plus, okay? They're in favor of this, but I don't think they're making this happen. Here's what I think is happening. This whole decision is being made by, right in the middle, the undecided majority. Who's an expert on marijuana, really? None of us, really. And these are the folks that are making the decision. They're making the decision. They're the undecided majority. And the goal for today is that when you leave, you're not there. You're not there. You can be pro, you can be anti, but be one or the other. Don't let this happen to you, because I think in Iowa, I hear so many people tell me, oh, it's inevitable. I don't believe it is inevitable here in the state of Iowa. But if we just sit back, these folks are going to allow it to happen. And here's what I mean. Most of you are associated with business. If a business sees this, I ran a business for 25 years. If I saw that in my sales projections for the coming year, I'd be doing something about that. If I thought this was a possibility, I'd have some plans in place. If I thought that was a possibility, I would be out in front of that. Businesses are proactive, not reactive. And yet business is about to be run over by this. Marijuana just, well, it wasn't on our radar. Well, that's what we're about today. It needs to be on your radar. And it's not just California. It's not just Washington, Oregon, Alaska, or Colorado. I didn't Photoshop that. And that's not for medical marijuana. That's just liberalized. That's for recreational purposes. Because that's been introduced, I think, at least, what, twice, Mary? And do you think it will be introduced again this year?
The pharmaceutical board has a hearing on Monday with a petition to move it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2.
Right, so this is right here, and even the change in other states has affected people's perception of risk here in Iowa. Matter of fact, this is a committee meeting at the Iowa legislature that I attended, and it's called the Cannabidiol Implementation Study Committee. Iowa is one of the states where, I think one of the 25 states now, where some component of marijuana is legal to possess for medicinal purposes. And here it's this cannabidiol oil. And I attended this very interesting, that's where I met that Dr. Josiah, and I sat right next to her. This is what's driving it. This is what's influencing the undecided majority. And I know your mother told you to use it. I know your teachers and your coaches told you to use it. It's a problem. Common sense. Because that is what's driving this. Common sense. And I mean, the pro people are wildly on board with it. You just Google marijuana and common sense images, hundreds of them. This is just the first three. New Hampshire, common sense for drug policy, it's common sense. Let's be literal for a minute, huh? Let's be literal. You know, people say common sense isn't very common anymore. Unfortunately, it's too common. That's what's driving this. the undecided majority, are being urged by these folks to use their common sense. Well, common, what does common mean? Unrefined, unsophisticated, uncivilized, and senses intelligence. So what we are using to decide whether we want to make another psychotropic drug legal is ordinary, unsophisticated intelligence. I mean, literally, that's what common sense is. Now, I'm not knocking common sense, because common sense works really well for things that we are already expert on. For things that we are already expert on. Matter of fact, evolution has made a whole part of our brain for nothing but common sense, and it's true. This is a skull of Homo habilis. This is 2.5 million years old. Notice what the skull does just above the eye orbits. Right back, right? Okay, now here's us. Homo sapien sapien, wise man. The person that named us didn't have any self-esteem problems, did they? No. But the question is, obviously this is bigger. You know, if you take that brain, that skull, you tip it upside down, and you put water in the cranial vault, and then you dump it out in a measuring beaker, you can tell exactly what the size of that brain was. We know what brain matter weighs. So that's a 1.25 pound brain. All right, here's us. That's a 3-pound brain. It's not just bigger. It's got different parts, and the different part is right up there in the dome. We've all got the dome. I mean, look at the dome on that kid. Really. That's my little grandson. He came over, he lives in France, and he was coming over, and my wife said, well, we have to go out and buy a crib. And I said, well, you know, I know right where his dad's crib is, up in the attic, and it's got a little, you know, a little dust on it, but I can take the Clorox wipes, and I think it'll be fine. Oh, no. She said, they'll never put him in there. I said, well, why not? And she said, the bars aren't spaced right. I said, did you see the melon on that kid? I said, he is not getting that between any bars. Did I have to buy a crib anyway?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay, all right. So I don't feel, yeah, all right. So I did buy the crib. Okay, what's the value of what's behind that? Here's what that's about. This is my favorite. I'm sure it's your favorite too. Liver and onions ice cream, Ben & Jerry's liver and onions. Ben & Jerry has a lot of off-the-wall flavors. I mean, we know that. But liver and onions is not one of them. So my question to you is this. Did Ben & Jerry just whip up a batch of liver and onions ice cream in their little ice cream laboratory, and then they take that cute little spoon and they went around all the employees and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Or did they just sit in their office, put their feet up on their desk, look up at the ceiling and go, liver and onions ice cream? Yuck! I think that's what they did. Do you think that's what they did?
Yeah.
I think it is, right? That's what that part of our brain allows us to do. Simulation. That's common sense. That's where we take what we already know, and there's the catch part, what we already know, and we put it together and we can simulate. Other animals can't do that. They do not have a dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Right? We can do that. Common sense works when I'm already an expert, when I already have some experience. But I got to tell you, as a species, that's a relatively new part of our brain. You know, I said the difference between those skulls was 2.5 million years. I read something very interesting the other day. If you extend your hands, the distance between here and here representing the entire history of the planet Earth. If you take a nail file and go one swipe, you have erased all record of anything that could look remotely like a human being. That's how new we are. 2.5 million years is nothing, and the fact is, we're bad at using that new part of our brain. I'll show you. This is a lotto winner, and it's a Powerball evidently. He's got the big check there. I love this picture. This gets me every time I look at this. First of all, of course, he won $189 million, so, you know, you can't believe you don't play. And I bought a lotto ticket before. But he's already a doctor. See, William Steele, MD. And I mean, you know, but he's probably financially stable, I'm guessing, okay. But now he's won the lotto. I mean, look at Mrs. Steele, and he won the lotto. I mean, this guy should have a smile that would have to be surgically removed, and he may or may not be able to do that depending on his specialty. Now, here's a fellow that's had a different life experience. He's been in an accident, and he's paralyzed from the waist down now forever. Okay. Now, there is actually research on these two different groups. Lotto winners and people who have been recently paralyzed. And the question is, a year later, how happy are you, 1 to 10? You know you've had the doctor do that, and on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your pain? Happiness, 1 to 10. Okay, now, this is, and maybe this is even out of vogue now, a no-brainer. I hate to say that, but, right. I mean, which one of these groups is gonna be happier? I mean, come on, right? A lot of winners, and there's the paraplegic. I mean, are we surprised? No, that's just common sense, right? No, there's the real results. A year later, they're both about the same. Our ability to simulate, our ability to gauge the risk or the potential of risk or benefit from something, we have a tool for that, but we're not very good at using it. We're not very good at using it. Here's one. This ought to raise common sense to a new level now, because this is so common sense. This is Monty Hall, and there's got to be some people who recognize Monty and remember the game. Let's make a deal. Okay, here's the deal. Monty has 3 doors, and he has something behind one of those doors that if you guess which door it's behind, you get it, and it's something you want. Like, whoa, like that'd be a good prevention mobile. I could have driven here and that. Prairie Ridge on the side. Right. Behind the other doors are something that you don't want. Like a goat. You don't want a goat. You don't want a goat. All right. So then Monty gets somebody from the audience and gets up there and he says, okay, go ahead and pick. And you know, they're obviously and understandably kind of agitated, and they go, 3, no 1, no 2, no 3, no. And then Monty gives them the look, and they go, okay, 2. And he goes, you should, and 2. So they pick door number 2. Okay. Then Monty does this. I didn't know if you realized Monty was going to say this. Monty volunteers to babysit your grandchildren. Don't let him do it. Because here's what he does next. He says, you pick door number 2. He said, I'm going to open one of the other doors. Oh, so he opens one of the other doors. And, oh, it's a goat. Oh, my God. And, oh, no, not a goat. And then pretty soon, you know, within a matter of seconds, they come to a sense and they go, hey, wait a minute. I didn't pick door number 1. Not only is this not bad, this is good for me. Because how many doors are left? 2. And have I already picked one? I have. This is good. This is good. And then Monty does this. This is mean. What does he do now?
Offer cash.
What do you want to change your
choice?
Yeah, you want to pick another door. Well, usually they'll think for a minute, and here's the very normal, common sense thought pattern. All right, now there's 2 doors, so I got a what chance? 50-50. Have I already picked one? No. I could change, all right, and it won't change my chances, but if in fact I change and then he opens that door and the car's behind it, I'll have to kill myself on national TV, and I don't want to do that, right? So I'm just sticking with it, okay? So he did this to enough people. Finally, one of them said to themselves, I wonder if there was a right answer to that. Should I have switched or not? I mean, it just seems so common sense, right? But who would this person ask? Well, if you recognize that great magazine, you know, it's in the Sunday paper, and there's a woman that has a column in there, Marilyn Voss Savant. She has the highest IQ in the world, and that's understandable because she's a woman. Thank you. Yes, exactly. And you know, a world beater IQ is like 115, she's like 195 or something. And so this person writes to her, and she's familiar with Let's Make a Deal, and his question was, should I have changed my pick? And Marilyn Voss Savant, unequivocally, absolutely, said, you need to change your pick. It will dramatically improve your chances of getting the car. She didn't say that you will get the car. She said it will improve your chances of getting the car. Well, I'll tell you what. You talk about hammering. She got 10,000 letters, and 1,000 of them from people with graduate degrees. Here's a few: Dr. Robert Sachs, Dr. Scott Smith, Dr. Robert Smith. I don't know what that, Dr. Ray Bobo. Feel comfortable with that, Bobo? Dr. Bobo? I don't know, whatever. But anyway, these people all have doctorates in mathematics. And I used to read the individual things they said, but they're so cruel. I can just sum it up real quickly. They said, Marilyn Voss Savant, shame on you. Shame on you. We have enough mathematical illiteracy in our country already that we don't need somebody who is allegedly the smartest person in the world going around telling people that they will improve their chances by changing like that. Shame on you. And not a couple letters. 1,000 letters from people with graduate degrees. Now, I don't care if you got the highest IQ in the world. She's still got a little feelings, doesn't she? It hurts her little self-esteem, but you know what? It didn't hurt it too bad. The only thing she felt bad about was these guys embarrassing themselves because she was right. She was right. I mean, you're saying it's 50-50 for goodness sakes. If you change, you have not changed anything. That's common sense. And that is common sense. But she was absolutely right. Would you like to know how that works? Just for, okay. All right, so you've already picked door number 2, all right? And Monty is proposing you pick door number 3. Well, here's what you do. You know, you think it was 50-50, I've already got one, I'm sticking, okay? Here's what Marlon bosses on. She knew like that, okay? Monty actually checked this out at his home. He was retired, he had 3 shoe boxes, he had a video group coming, he had car keys in one of the boxes, and I don't know what in the other 2 boxes, and he did it over and over again, and changing it and not changing it, and she was absolutely right. And here's what she said to herself. She said, what were my chances of picking the right door right off the bat?
33.
1 out of 3. 1 out of 3, right, okay. When he opens that door, does that change that?
Sure.
No. No. You got a 1 out of 3 chance. You got a 1 out of 3 chance. The minute you change your pick, you have increased your chances to 1 out of 2. She was right. But what I'm saying is common sense. You know, we are always admonished to use it. It's a blunt instrument. And now we're trying to decide whether we should take another psychotropic drug and make it legal and available in our culture. And I'm proposing that's going to turn out about like this. Now, these young ladies seem to think that marijuana is safer than alcohol. And they're using their common sense. And it does seem right. Alcohol-related OWIs, I happen to teach the class you have to take to get your license back after an OWI. And almost exclusively, my participants got their OWI in association with alcohol. And occasionally, there'll be somebody who says, oh, I didn't have any blood alcohol level at all. And I said, well, you got an OWI because, and it's in marijuana. Occasionally. And so really it is, it's like the difference between the size of those fonts. And you go, see, common sense, come on. Alcohol is more dangerous, marijuana therefore is safer. That's common sense. And it seems like that, but let's stop and think about this. In Iowa, somewhere between 54 and 56% of Iowans say, I'm a regular alcohol user. That is, I have a drink once a month or more. That's slightly more than half the population. Do you suppose half the population of Iowa are regular marijuana smokers? No. It's down in somewhere in the area of 5%, like that. Right. So right off the bat, you've got over 10 times as many people using alcohol as you do smoking marijuana. So you wouldn't have as many OWIs, would you? It'd at least be 10 to 1. Then there's another factor. Alcohol is a legal substance here in Iowa, right? If I'm over 21, giddy up, okay? So what am I doing when I'm drinking? We're out dancing. I'm out for dinner with you. I'm over at your house watching the game. We're bowling, right? And then I have to drive home. Well, that gives me significant exposure for an OWI. Is marijuana legal for any purposes here in the state of Iowa? That is smokable marijuana? No. So I'm not at the bowling alley between frames smoking a blunt. I'm not out for dinner waiting for the dessert course and smoking a joint. I'm not. So where am I? Well, because it's illegal, I'm home in my basement, in my Barcalounger, listening to my kicking, although tiny, stereo system, right? And the home theater. I'm not in a position where I'm likely to get an OWI, and unless I can figure out a way to get my car in the basement, which this guy almost did, I'm not going to get an OWI. So if you'd have 1/10 as many just from numbers, and the fact I'm probably not where I'm driving, I think, is it that explains the difference in the numbers, or is it safer? That's a decision for you. This one has more meaning to me now than when I put it up here. When I went to that cannabidiol implementation study committee, they had 27 people that got up and had public comment. And I was one of them, and there were 26 other people. And out of those 26, I heard 2 people that did say this. It's a plant. It can't hurt you. It's made by God, okay? And I knew, and I've heard that from clients. I mean, it's not that I haven't heard that, But you know, to hear it at that committee meeting was like, wow, people really do think this. Okay, and it's a plant, come on. How dangerous could it be? Well, let's not use our common sense. Let's use what we really do know. Do we recognize this plant? Right, that's Papaver somniferum. That's the opium poppy right there. I think most of us probably have a pretty healthy degree of respect, right, for that. If I had some heroin right here and I said, here, I'll fix up my kit, would you like to take a shot of this? You'd probably say no, right? Although that certainly looks like a plant to me. Here's another plant, a little nondescript shrub, is it not? That's Erythroxium coca. That's the shrub that cocaine comes from, and it obviously is a plant, right? Here's marijuana, and no argument, that's a plant, okay? Here's outdoor people. Poison ivy, who said that? Oh, good for you, Robin, okay. Yeah, that's poison ivy, right? Even if, you know, getting it on my skin is one thing. Breathing in the smoke, if I put that on a bonfire, that's a life and death kind of situation right there, right? But that's still a plant, isn't it? And that's broccoli, right? That's my vegetables. My wife tells me to eat my vegetables. If you put enough hollandaise sauce on that, it's good. Yeah. But the point is, does being a plant suggest to me risk or benefit? The fact that it's a plant? It doesn't look like that is any kind of a guide as to the potential risk or benefit. Common sense is not the thing to use here. This is the big lever. This is the big lever, medicine. And when I say that, we'll look at this, and they've got a tagline, pro-marijuana organizations initially start out in all the states that have it for recreational purposes. Now, just let me ask you a question. All the states that have marijuana legal for recreational purposes, did they have it legal for medicinal purposes first? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. So this is step number one, exactly. We simply associate the word. So it's medicine. And again, I don't know about you, but when the doctor prescribes something for me and I go to the pharmacy and get it, I am not scared to death this stuff is going to hurt me, addict me, kill me, whatever. I mean, you know, and on the TV ads you hear all those side effects and whatever, and you listen to them, you know. But typically, I am not afraid of the prescription drugs that have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. So it's medicine, okay. Well, here's the thing. Look at this. This is, what does it say on there? Heroin hydrochloride, right? And look who made it. The Bayer Company. They invented heroin. Bayer Pharmaceuticals invented heroin. Ooh, what was this for, by the way? I just demonstrated to you what it's for. I should have some right now. Cough medicine. It is the most, I'm not being serious, the most effective cough medicine in the world. If you said, if we don't stop that person from coughing in the next 2 seconds, they're going to be dead. Boom, heroin. Works every time, okay? But does that mean it's risk-free, is the question. It is medicine, was medicine. Right now it's a C1, controlled substance. That means no medicinal value, high risk for potential for abuse or addiction. But here's something. Methamphetamine, this is the brand name, the Zoxyn. This is not like meth, this is meth. And my doctor can prescribe this to me. This is the big bottle that the pharmacist has, and then when I get my prescription from the doctor, he puts it in a little bottle. Is not the most addictive substance in the world methamphetamine? And it is. And yet the doctor can prescribe it. It's medicine, but does that make it risk-free?
What do they prescribe that for?
Good question. Narcolepsy. Narcolepsy. You know, I'm talking to you now. You know, Robin's got to come. Hey, wait up here. Okay. I had a friend whose mother had narcolepsy. I was a teenager. I went over to his house. I helped him replace the panels in the garage door. And it took us longer than we thought, so it was like 6 o'clock, and his mom said, well, stay for dinner with me, boys. And so he was like 30, and I'm like 16, so I'm sitting there. And his mom's talking to us, and she's just like, and now as a teenager, you want to laugh at that. But for some reason, and I was not full of it since as a teenager, but I thought, I don't think this is funny. I don't think I should laugh at this. I don't think I should say anything about it. But on the way back, I said to him, your mom, I felt it. Oh, yeah. He says, she's got narcolepsy. And I said, but she drives her car, and she, you know, she's like, I'd never seen that. He goes, well, you know, you see, it was like 7 o'clock by the time he ate. She got up in the morning, she took her meth, not kind of like meth, but meth, prescribed by the doctor, and she was fine all day. Drive her car, play with her grandkids, whatever, By nighttime, she's getting a little sleepy, she wants to go to bed, oh, don't take your meth, and in the morning she just does it again. Allows her to be at home, health benefit, that's why methamphetamine is a C2 controlled substance. Limited medical use, but some, but high risk for potential for abuse or addiction. But again, it is medicine. And look at that one. That's not kind of like cocaine. That is cocaine. And notice what it says there, RX only. It's prescribable. But does being a medicine make it risk-free? We've looked at heroin, meth, and cocaine. They're not risk-free. And they all have a medicinal history. And 2 of them have a current medicinal history. So the word medical is the tag term that they put on there. And it just, you know, it is semantics, but it's powerful semantics. When we put medicine onto that, does it make it medicine? Or does it just reduce our perception of risk? Oh, they're wizards at marketing. If I had anything to sell, I would go to Normal or the pro-marijuana people and say, listen, I want to sell this thing, would you help me out? Because they're wizards. It's working. It's the undecided majority here seeing that and going, ooh, this medicine, come on. And they have a tag term for recreational. And I just saw this at the last election. Discrimination. Now, discrimination is bad, right? I mean, you know, in our minds, we have this as a word that elicits some kind of emotion. So now we attach that to legalization of recreational use of marijuana, and we're going to end discrimination. That's good. Yeah, end discrimination, right? That's good. Right, that's the tag term. This is fantastic here. This is the thing. Okay, so now if I hear the word medicine and marijuana, and I think there's any potential to relieve somebody's suffering, thank God we are compassionate people. We have empathy. We are social creatures. That's a good thing, okay? And that has been used as a lever. And I love this. I found this one because it has compassion. And then they added a little bit here. Common sense, right? Because it's only common sense. You know, if Aunt Minnie is like, 80 years old, she could get a little bit away from lighting up once in a while. Come on. As Letterman said, who gets hurt here? Really? Nobody. Well, let's look at this for a minute here. Now, the Governor's Office of Drug Control Policy has a rather radical idea. They said, you know what, don't we have an organization that already does this? The FDA, Food and Drug Administration. So they go, we don't say there's no potential medicinal benefit to some of the components in the plant cannabis sativa. But let's do it like we do with the other 3,000 prescription drugs and let the FDA figure it out. There would be compassion. Here's why this compassion thing maybe falls short. This just represents the number of people in the states where it's legal for medicinal purposes that have the little card. Now, nobody can write a prescription for marijuana, so don't even use those 2 terms together. It's a federal crime. There's not a real doctor in the world that can write a prescription for marijuana. The little card simply is a recommendation that the doctor thinks for my health condition this could be beneficial. And then when law enforcement catches me and I have an ounce or whatever the state law is, if I have this card, then adios, have a nice day. There's the people that have it. Here are the part that is actually 3 or 4% of that actually have cancer or AIDS. 2 of the main things that this is purported to be beneficial for. What is the rest of that? The average demographic for the people that have the medical marijuana card, 30-year-old white man. Not a particularly unhealthy demographic last time I looked. I'd love to be 30 again. I was healthy then. Right, something else is going on here. Right, something else is going on here. I mean, we know what's going on here. This is about smoking marijuana. And not surprisingly, and who's surprised, this is Oregon. Now, Oregon just passed it for recreational purposes, but first it was medicinal purposes. And this article from the Oregonian found that there was one doctor that wrote 4,500 of those cards in 1 year. I mean, just do the math. I mean, I actually was in Montana in one of these medical marijuana shops, and you could sit down and there was a doctor right there that would see you. And I would sit there and I thought, man, it's going to take forever. because there was a lot of people in front of me, and they were coming in and going out and coming in. I'm not sure it was a thorough physical examination, but I don't know. Maybe they had their folder, but I don't know. But are we surprised? I mean, it's compassion and it's common sense, but it's being taken advantage of is what it seems like to me. If I want to show my compassion for somebody who has some health issues that this might help, guess what? For 29 years, almost 3 decades, the doctor could have prescribed and they could go right to the drugstore and get Marinol. If I have AIDS or I'm taking chemotherapy and I have no appetite and I'm losing weight, what does marijuana do for me? Gives me the munchies, exactly, and it does. And guess what? I can take a pill that has gone through the exact process of all the other 3,000 drugs, and the doctor can write me a prescription for it. I can just go right to the Walgreens and bingo. They'll just hand it right to me. Got it there. Convenient. If I want to be compassionate, I guess that could be already. I don't need to smoke it. But here's the theory of the people that are in favor of smoking it. Well, listen, if you're nauseous from your chemotherapy and you take the pill, you'll throw it up and it won't do any good. You've got to smoke it. You got to. Common sense says, I think they're right. But guess what? This is Sativex. Sativex, and it's a product of GW Pharmaceuticals. And it is THC, right there, tetrahydrocannabinol. And it's like an asthma inhaler, a measured, precise dose. Now, it's not available here in the United States, but I did find this. April 28, 2014, U.S. Food and Drug Administration has given fast-track designation to Sativex. It will be, if it is found to be efficacious and safe, it will be available here. But everyone else that had a health issue had to wait until the drug that it turned out to ultimately be beneficial for them was vetted by the Food and Drug Administration. Why do people with these health conditions get special treatment? It's in the process. It's in the pipeline. Matter of fact, here's the drug that the people with Dravet syndrome are interested in. This is not tetrahydrocannabinol. This is cannabidiol. It is allegedly a non-psychotropic component of marijuana, and it is thought to, believed to, and my God, I saw those mothers, I was down there, they hope it has some benefit. That's all they got. That's all they got is hope. Now, GW Pharmaceuticals was getting kind of be the reputation of the pharmaceutical company that's the pot pharmaceutical company, because they make Sativex already. They have a proprietary hybrid strain of marijuana that's all CBD and no THC, all cannabidiol, all cannabidiol. And they have it right now, and guess what? That Dr. Josie that I showed you her picture at the beginning, she left the committee meeting and flew off to meet with other people such as ourselves that were going to be the first places to actually start the double-blind study. She said it's very hard to get participants for this, because if you've got a child with this Dravet syndrome, and now you know you're in this double-blind study, you know there's a chance that my kid's not even getting the real thing. And that's part of the study, right? There's not a lot of people interested in signing up for that. But there's a chance that they could, and the doctor doesn't know. But she's going to do that. Matter of fact, I held this box. Well, actually, I took the picture. That's not my hand. It says, this is Epidiolex. I mean, this is not a theory that they're going to do this. It's in the pipeline already. And it says, limited by federal or United States law to investigational use. And there was a guy there whose son had developed this severe epilepsy after a head injury. And I went up to him and I asked him, I said, so you're using this Epidiolex. What do you think? And he said, well, he has fewer seizures. I said, you still have seizures? Yeah. Okay. And I hope it works, and I know you hope it works. But why do they get special treatment? Why do we let legislators and the public decide whether this is medicine? It's like letting the plumber decide about the strength of the fins in my jet engine. And we wouldn't do that. This is, I love this one, Dr. Mark Johnson, probably many of you know him. He is the head of the diabetic clinic now at Mercy. He's big in palliative medicine, and he worked at hospice for a long time. And he called me and he said, oh, you got to come over to my office right now. I got a magazine for you. And this is the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, quarterly, okay? And it says, medical marijuana, what should palliative care specialists know? I thought this is interesting because this is the ultimate defense. You know, people are going to die anyway, and you know, let them smoke a little bit, really, come on. Okay, here's what it said in this magazine. This is for experts, for the organizations, the Institute of Medicine, American College of Physicians, American Medical Association, American Society of Addiction Medicine. Here's what they said. The Institute of Medicine said yes conditionally, I love this, when you can develop a safe and reliable delivery system. Evidently they don't think, is a safe and reliable delivery system. And I mean, let's stop and think about that from a literal sense. Is there one medicine where a doctor or pharmacist says take it home and smoke it? One. Name one. That's a notoriously unreliable way to dose medicine. And they even recognize this. The American College of Physicians? No. The American Medical Association? No. The American Society of Addiction Medicine? No. Matter of fact, the overall conclusion of that article said the statements uniformly reject the use of smoked cannabis, mainly because of the inferred health risk of inhaled burned hydrocarbons. So even for people who are at death's door, the experts don't recommend this. And this is the last one, this is the big one. And see, I hear this working in Prairie Ridge. Well, you know, you can't become addicted to this. Okay. It's safer than alcohol. Now, that seems like common sense would say, okay, because here are the two main requirements for diagnosis of addiction. At least on occasion, when I start using, I cannot predict when I'll stop. I'll call it out of control usage. And at least on occasion, when I stop, if I actually do have an addiction, I experience physical symptoms. And what do we call that?
Withdrawal.
Withdrawal, right. And they say this, and Normal is a big pro-marijuana organization, and they say this, that's not to say that some marijuana smokers do not become psychologically dependent on marijuana or find quitting difficult. So they have acknowledged that some people cannot control their usage. Okay, so there's the first part. But then the argument goes, when anybody quits smoking marijuana, nobody experiences any big withdrawal symptoms, any big withdrawal syndromes. It's not that they don't experience any withdrawal symptoms, they don't experience any big withdrawal syndrome. I mean, I can die from withdrawal from alcohol. I can die from withdrawal from benzodiazepines, and it is the absolute truth. Nobody has ever died from withdrawal from marijuana. But here's what's going on. The one psychotropic substance that is soluble in fat, everything else is soluble in water. Alcohol soluble in water, heroin, cocaine, meth, PCP, all soluble in water, and our bodies handle water all the time. So when I stop drinking, when I stop using my heroin or whatever, and I pee a couple times, it's gone, and my body says, whoa, wait a minute, that's not normal. I go into withdrawal. The THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, is soluble in fat. And so as I smoke, I'm storing it up. I'm not intentionally storing it up. I don't know that I'm storing it up, but I'm storing it up. That's how come I can fail a pre-employment drug test a week after I smoke, 2 weeks after I smoke, 3 weeks after I smoke, 4 weeks after I smoke. Because does our body process fat rapidly? No. So it's slowly leaking out. And I don't have any big withdrawal syndrome. It's like me taking a little drink for my withdrawal from alcohol, except it's happening automatically. People can be addicted to marijuana. It's a psychotropic drug like anything else. Matter of fact, I found this on the Marinol. I went to the FDA website. Now, Marinol was the drug, you know, for an appetite stimulant. And here's what it said. It said, do not stop using Marinol suddenly after long-term use, or you could have unpleasant withdrawal symptoms. Marijuana smokers say there's no withdrawal, but the Food and Drug Administration seems to think there is. The reality of it is, and I found this the other day, I found this rather startling, actually. Well, not this. The #1 primary substance for teenagers in treatment. For teenagers in treatment, and the ages were 15, 16, 17, is not alcohol, it's marijuana. But the numbers, 72% of the kids of that age in treatment in the United States for addiction, 72% are in treatment for addiction to marijuana. 72%. Alcohol, 17%. Now this isn't about good or bad or right or wrong. If I could, people ask me this all the time, they go, well, would you trade marijuana for alcohol? If I could trade alcohol, boom, gone, marijuana in, I'd do it in a minute. I'd do it in a minute. You'd have a dramatic reduction in sexual assaults and violence and all that. I had a college, a dean of students tell me the other day, he said, because I come and I speak to all the freshmen, and he said, He said, well, you know, you've been doing this for like 6 years. He says, I gotta tell you, our alcohol-related incidents are dropping dramatically. And I said, well, you know, I don't think I can take any credit for that. But he said, because I said, what's happening to your marijuana stats? He goes, like that. But he said, you know, we used to be taking people to the ER all the time. Every weekend, doors kicked in, sheetrock with holes in it, people were raped and beat up and whatever. He said, we don't hardly ever have that now. Everybody's just chilling. Right? So, but the point is, you can't do that. I can't switch. We can't switch. All this would be is another psychotropic drug. The most costly psychotropic drug to our culture, bar none, not even close, alcohol, because it's the most available. Right, exactly. Do we want to add another available psychotropic drug? It's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's not about reefer madness. It's not about whether it has any medicinal benefit or not. I hope it does. It's about, do we want another legal psychotropic drug? Because this is the result. Here's medical marijuana. Can there be that much need? Can there be that much need? This is of course, it's heavily populated. It's Los Angeles County, but it's still, you see what will happen and you know what will happen. There are more liquor licenses in Cerro Gordo County than there are clothing stores, grocery stores, banks, and gas stations combined. Combined. That's what happened with the previous legal psychotropic drug. And when you make another psychotropic drug legal, guess what? The same thing happens. Why would we expect different? Here's Colorado. Here's Colorado. That's really a small part of Colorado. We don't need to wonder what will happen. We have a perfect example already. And this, marijuana legislation opponents worry states can't keep drug away from children. Okay. Well, here's how we've been doing with alcohol, because, and I love it, one of the guy I admire more than anybody is the head of the Iowa Alcoholic Beverages Division, Stephen Larson, and he calls alcohol, I love it, he says it's an age-restricted product. And I love that. Okay, age-restricted product. How's that working? Okay, this is the whole darn United States. Well, we got over a third of the kids had something to drink, a third, but it's age-restricted, right? Here, this is 2013. 1 out of 5 were binge drinking, right? And a quarter of them were riding in a car where the driver had been drinking. But it's age-restricted. How does that age-restricted work? It doesn't. It doesn't. And so now we're going to say, marijuana will be okay, nobody can buy it unless they're over 21. That doesn't work. That doesn't work with alcohol, and why would we think it would work with marijuana? And all this, the Dunedin study, this is a study in New Zealand, Dunedin, New Zealand. And there's a lot of controversy around this. It's a longitudinal study, so it took 30 years? 30 years, right. And so we look at a whole bunch of people, I don't know, thousands, and one of the things they discovered is an 8-point drop in IQ of people who had began marijuana use, regular marijuana use at a young age, 15, 16, 17. Now the brain when you're an adolescent is a very plastic organ. It's very vulnerable. It's vulnerable. My chances of developing alcoholism increase dramatically when I start drinking at those ages. No different here. No different here. 8-point drop in IQ, this is a permanent. This is not people who were still smoking. This is people who had started smoking heavily as teenagers. And even if they quit, they had this 8-point IQ drop. Man, I tell you, if I had an 8-point IQ drop, I'd be down to like 2. And I can't, that's a significant number. You go 8, well, it's just 8. No, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. But again, I'm not trying to demonize marijuana, because it's not the devil weed. It's just a plant. It's a psychotropic drug, like all the other psychotropic drugs we have in our culture. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's wrong. It's just, can we finally learn how to handle these things in our culture? Can we finally learn how to do that? There are no good drugs or bad drugs. There are people who have a legitimate perception of risk or not. That's all we've got. Now here's the thing. What does this mean if I have a business? Well, you know, I could just sit back and say, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. This is one section of a drug-free workplace policy, and the company will remain unnamed, but they have some pretty definite perceptions about marijuana. It says marijuana, including cannabis, cannabinoids, and THC derivatives. The company has a zero tolerance for cannabinoids and has instructed its medical review officer that no explanation for the presence of this substance should be accepted. So if this company works like in Colorado, you could say, oh yeah, well, we're in Colorado, okay? How does that work? Well, I'll show you how that works. This is a fellow that failed a drug test and then was terminated, and it's Dish Network, so you'll recognize the company, and they're based in Colorado. Look how it turned out.
We're in town at 6. Even if you have a license to use medical marijuana, your company can legally fire you if you fail a drug test. That's the decision out today from the Colorado Court of Appeals. We asked our iBroadcast to look into this ruling for us and its impact on all workers. He joins us now live at Dish Network, which is the company involved in this case in Hebron. The company has a strict anti-drug policy and fired an employee for testing positive for marijuana.
Yeah, and according to this letter from Dish, despite knowing the company drug policy, that employee said that he would continue to use medical marijuana, later taking legal action after his termination. Well, today, the Court of Appeals sided with Dish Network.
We hope that the Court of Appeals
He was
will
in a
apply
wheelchair,
the state
paralyzed
law
from waist down.
as they should, without the pressures of the federal law.
Back in November, attorney Mike Evans had high hopes, but the Colorado Court of Appeals decided otherwise. There is no employment protection for people who use marijuana.
Well, there's a couple messages I could get from that. First of all, I could think, well, I don't need to do anything because we got a company policy, and that's one court decision in one state. Are they all going to turn out that way? Who knows? Really, who knows? Right? It also could point out to me how important my policy is at work. If they hadn't had that policy, they couldn't do anything about that. But here's the ramifications as I see them. Maybe you can think of some other things. First of all, everybody's not, let's imagine that in Iowa, it's legal for recreational purposes, okay? Do you imagine the entire state's gonna run out and light up? No. I would think not. Matter of fact, I got laughed at by my coworkers at Prairie Ridge. This is 2 years ago when Colorado and Washington passed it, and they interviewed me at KIMT out on the lawn in front, and I said, well, I don't think there's a lot of pent-up desire on the part of, people in Colorado to all run out and start smoking marijuana, and they like that. And I don't think there was. But if there's people that say, well, I don't want any legal hassle, but I try it if there was no legal, there's a certain number of those folks, and your potential work pool will just go, it won't go, it will just go, like that. Because if you have a drug-free workplace policy, I bet you test for marijuana in a pre-employment drug test. And those people will become, even if they're occasional smokers, just on the weekend and smoke a little bit, they will become virtually unemployable. Now, if you have fewer workers to choose from, this is just law of supply and demand. Will you have to pay more for the people that can pass the drug test? It's supply and demand, I'm thinking, because you're all competing. I mean, I don't want this to be adversarial here, but you see what I mean. When you go to hire people, there's a pool of potential employees out there. And I'm just proposing, and you'll decide this for yourself, I think it will reduce that to a certain amount, and that will cause companies to have to pay more to get people who can, and I hear this now, simply pass the drug test. Liability insurance. If I am an insurance company and I cover a business in the state where it is legal for recreational purposes and where it's not legal for recreational purposes, I think there's going to be different rates in those two states. What do you think? Just thinking. You know what I'm saying? Recreational. Medicinal, again, is the first step. And attracting marijuana users from other states. I cannot tell you the number and the amount of people who have said to me, and we got to put it in perspective where I work, okay? They said, well, I'm just going to move to Colorado. Okay. You're a grown-up. Yeah. Well, what does Colorado become? A magnet for people who, according to their own Court of Appeals, are unemployable. Is that a desirable thing? Increased cost with increased testing. Are you just going to test the way you did before? Or if marijuana is more available or more common or used more often, do you think you might test a little bit more? Might you switch to random instead of post-accident? Because I love post-accident. Have we already had a problem? Yes, and then we test. Random, I'm getting out in front of it, but random costs more because it's a, post-accident, it only costs me to test after the accident. Random, it's a constant cost, okay? I'm kind of an advocate of random, but that's neither here nor there. But that's going to increase costs. And do I have to change my company policy? I mean, I don't have to, but would I want to? Would I want to? That's a cost, that's a legal document, you have to have your attorney involved in that. An increased likelihood of legalizing recreational use if the state goes for medical purposes, smokable marijuana for medicinal purposes. I mean, are these things reasonable? These are guys that are just sitting at my desk, and I came up with these, and I ran my business for 25 years. These seem to be possibilities to me. Do they seem to be possibilities to you? All possibilities that would cost my business more. Right. And it isn't conjecture. This is Colorado, in the workplace in Colorado, average number of THC positive results per month. What did we think was going to happen? What did we think was going to happen? I mean, it's interesting. I see this when it was Washington and Colorado. I saw this. This is good. This is good. This will be an experiment. The rest of the country will look at this and go, oh, wait a minute. They don't seem to be getting that message, do they? They don't seem to be getting that message. It's not too late. It's not too late. It's not inevitable here in the state of Iowa. And, you know, you might think, well, it'll never happen in Iowa. I bet they thought that in Colorado. I bet they thought that in Washington. And how you respond to this, you're all grown-ups. You know what needs to be done. Business is a powerful, influencing entity in the state. I'm not going to say influence with who, but it's a powerful influence. And as a company, you know, be involved with the company, I think getting out in front of this would be something that would be in the best interest of the profitability and the health of my company in the future. I said over in Winnebago County and Hancock County, the HR person from Stellar was there, Leanne Van Ort. And I said, Leanne, does your company plan on being in business next year? She said, you know, she's kind of like, yeah. And I go, and the next year? Yeah. And the next year? Yeah. Okay. You can change your potential employee pool over time, but that takes being involved in prevention. Prevention works. Your workplace policy is prevention. It's not the only prevention that businesses can do. Businesses need to be involved with their local prevention agencies to get out in front of this. You literally can affect the quality of your employee pool in the future, but you need to start now. Prevention is an investment, and I'm sorry that it has to happen with substances, but it does. We live. For every dollar spent on prevention, $7 to $12 are saved in medical and law enforcement and treatment costs. It's a fantastic return on investment. 7 to 12, if ROI, if I said, let's invest in this, you know, you go, giddy up, right? But people don't believe that prevention works. But it does. We simply have created a culture where this is the most likely outcome of the system we have made, and we simply have to change the system, and we can get a different outcome. You're supposed to be smiling now. You look kind of dire. Yeah. I think that's about it. Participate in countywide prevention, and you have a little flyer in your folder from the Mid-City Task Force, which would be your local prevention agency here. Prairie Ridge, of course, has a prevention agency. And that yellow sheet in there, if you would answer that yes or no down at the bottom with the red exclamation mark by it. And if you would like a supervisor training to conform to Iowa Code 730.5, I can provide that at no cost, so you could say you're interested in that. Anybody have any questions? We can talk about this. I'd like to hear a little input from businesses, what you think. Yeah.
Jay, what
Bill.
is the experience of other countries that have legalized marijuana?
Well, and that's a good, and I don't know that I'm going to even, Mary, do you have some input on that?
There's a lot of anecdotal
Yeah.
stuff, but there's not a lot of good data.
Right. You know, here's the deal. As far as alcohol use in our country, we say we've got $225 billion cost to the harm, and that's in a year. Now, over in Europe, we're teetotalers compared to them. And yet, I read a study by a guy who went to school in Belgium, came back, went over there to do a research study, and he went to his university, and he asked 12 professors there, so these are doctorate level people, where would you go if you needed treatment for alcoholism? One of them said Well, if you had that problem, you'd know where to go. And the other 11 had no idea. So their perception of the cost of substance usage may not, you know, it's not, they do not perceive it the same way. So again, as Mary said, most of it's anecdotal. But we do have experience right here that we can look at. How is this working with alcohol? How is it? It's $225 billion a year it costs us. And we want, and would it be, no, I'm asking you to think about is, will it be dramatically different with another psychotropic drug? I can tell you this about the difference between drinking and smoking, okay? And I don't mean alcohol and marijuana, I mean the delivery route. Let's use meth as an example. There's 7 ways to use meth, 6 if you're a man, 7 if you're a woman. And here's the thing, if I take meth as a pill, and you saw the little bottle, so I take Desoxyn, I get some from my grandmother's medicine cabinet, and I take it. I take that, it's 20 to 30 minutes before I feel, whew, okay. Now, if I smoke it, it's as fast as injecting it. Smoking is as fast as injecting it. That's why nicotine is so addictive. It's the speed of delivery that my brain gets the message. How quickly did my brain get the message? And how are we going to use marijuana for medicinal purposes or any other purpose? We are going to smoke it. That is the most direct path to send my brain a message, and my brain is the most vulnerable to the fastest messages. So, and anyway, I think we have an example with alcohol here, and all we need to do is to look at it and say, how'd that turn out, and we can see what's going to happen from marijuana.
The bar graph that showed the increased use of positive cannabis testing, is there a similar graph that shows how much the state is having to spend on welfare assistance and that sort of stuff? I mean, has there been a corollary?
Oh, in Colorado.
In Colorado,
Yes.
because in Colorado they claim, gee, the tax rolls are wonderful, we're making tons of money on marijuana. My question is, how much are they spending on the back end that they're not
Yeah.
capturing?
Okay, well, you can address that, but I can say, and again, I want to use alcohol as an example because I'm so familiar with that, but here's the thing. The Iowa Alcoholic Beverage Division in the state of Iowa, and again, it's a prevention agency, they're my ally, I'm not knocking them. They made $119 million, contributed to the treasury, actually $119 million, that's a bunch. But the Center for Disease Control, the people we're looking at to save us from Ebola, okay, they said that problematic alcohol use in Iowa last year cost us $2 billion. $2 billion. So I did the math. For every dollar we got from selling alcohol to the state, it cost us $16. If you're in business, I think you instantly smoke that one. Right? Here, yeah. Give me $16, I'll give you $1. And so the cash revenues, the revenue from the marijuana, again, the things I have heard in Colorado, it's not what they expected it to be.
I'll tell you who can tell you that. His name is Dr. Christian Thurston. He has a website, and he is, he's in Colorado Springs, or Denver, he's up in Denver. And,
He's like a pediatric psychiatrist, isn't he?
yes, yes. But he has actually had a research project with marijuana that has, anyway, he's been analyzing their costs since they passed it out there. And so at first, it wasn't, 2012, it wasn't real bad. But if you look at his numbers, as they go in 2013, moving to 2014.
Part of my question is really not so much the cost of treatment of addiction and that sort of stuff, but from the standpoint of employability. So they're not employable
Right.
here, now they're in Colorado, they're not employable in Colorado. So
Right.
what assistance are they getting from the state, not needing addiction treatment, which is
Right,
simply
exactly,
to sustain in the state?
exactly.
You know, your corollary cost of the sustainability
Yeah.
of someone who becomes a non-productive member of society, that may be a harsh term, but just questionable.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, and, you know, it's always been in my belief that using the strategy of legalizing a psychotropic drug as a way to make money is not a money-making strategy. We have to do it here because it has such deeply ingrained cultural momentum. I don't know if anybody here heard me Friday on KIMT, but they were talking about the 5 top binge drinking states, and Iowa was one of them. And they said, I pointed out to the reporter, I said, well, they're usually the same all the time. Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. And usually Vermont gets in there once in a while, Rhode Island, but those are the 5 are all the same. And she said, Well, why is that? And you know, people tell me because there's nothing to do around here, right? And it's cold, winters are cold, right? And I said, I don't believe it's that. I said, here's what it is. You notice those states all touch each other, right? Right? What's the commonality there in those states? The majority of people have first ancestry that's either Scandinavian or German. Now, there's, you know, I got a room full of people whose name ends in S-O-N or S-T-A-D. It's not about good or bad. That's not what it's about. In those countries, there is a very low perception of risk with alcohol, especially beer. In the old defunct Schlitz Brewery up in St. Paul, they had beer coming out of the drinking fountains. Well, now they're trying to make money. It's a business, right? We're trying to make money. We have risks there. We have forklifts. We have railroad sidings. We have those things. They don't want any accidents. How much perception of risk did they associate with their product? That's what it's about. It's not about there's nothing wrong. I'm German. There's nothing wrong with being Scandinavian or German. And they're no more biologically vulnerable than anybody else. It has to do with perception of risk. And when we put the word medicine with marijuana, what does that do to people's perception of risk? It lowers it. No. So I think we'll have more. I'm hoping, that's why I thought this would be a good deal. Well, sure, let Colorado and Washington, let them go, see how that works. You know what, though? Data is power, and that's the reason we have this problem with alcohol. Is there anything on the Iowa death certificate that asks alcohol-related? No. Is there a question for tobacco-related? Yes, that's the second leading cause of death. The third leading cause of death is, hypothetically, because it isn't the rest of the nation, alcohol, but do we even ask the question? We don't. We can't give people a legitimate perception of risk. And so the data is the thing, and you're right. If Colorado, if we start to get some accurate data out of there, we can make the decision. Wouldn't we all love it when they said, you know, we did make a lot of money in this, didn't cost anything? And we go, oh, okay, giddy up. And who knows what it'll be? I don't, and I'm not saying that it will cost, but I'm saying that the other legal drug costs us a ton, so I don't know why this would be any different.
Jim, I'd be curious as to your perception. You know, there was a century ago, Iowa bans nicotine or cigarettes, and then, of course, the federal experiment with prohibition.
Right.
Both of those failed. So is it inevitable, in some respects, even with the correct science and information, that that this trend is going to happen?
Okay, I have a thought on that. So he says, is it inevitable? Because with the other substances, they don't seem to be able to go away. We can't terminate them, absolutely. But here's the thing. They have so much cultural momentum. Human beings have been consuming alcohol for 10,000 years. We've been smoking as, you know, since the European encroachment, I love that term. Here in North America, we've been smoking that long. So it's from 1600, so we've been smoking, you know, for hundreds of years, and it's got a lot of cultural momentum. Marijuana has not been a big mainstream thing, and so I think that's maybe a different case. If we get out in front of it, we maybe could, right. The thing with alcohol is what we need to supply, and that's what prohibition, the end of prohibition, that's what your controlled state of Iowa is about. The Iowa Alcoholic Beverage Division is to supply the unstimulated demand. Is there a demand for alcohol? Yes. Supply the unstimulated demand. The only thing is, the IABD doesn't make the laws. The legislature makes the laws. And do they advertise alcohol here in Iowa? Is advertising stimulating demand? Right, exactly. Here's the thing. Alcohol and marijuana are what we call sui generis. That's a Latin term. I just learned that from the IABD. Sui generis simply means in a class by itself. We sell alcohol and we will sell marijuana. Matter of fact, and we will sell marijuana. Here, I want to show you this. I don't know why. There we go. There we go. Here's the way we sell alcohol right now. Okay. All right, drive up. Yeah. Right, costs $225 billion a year. Here's the little inhaler things. This is in Colorado. Okay? These are all edible. This is candy. This is candy. There's chocolate bars, $4.20, right? Okay. Right. Are we surprised? Are we surprised? Do they have flavored alcohol? Sure. Well, duh, you're going to have flavored marijuana.
You got any pictures of gummy bears?
No, I think there's probably some in here, but I don't know which is which.
Tell
Right.
me they're not already marketed
Yeah.
to kids.
Here's a vending machine for marijuana edibles. A vending machine. here's vapors, so we can smoke, I mean, and this is the only one made up right here. That's made up now, but you perceive that that is totally unlikely or likely? Yeah, yeah. Somebody's gonna have to put their, no, they don't. It's interesting, as human beings, we like to do things to feel good. It's a fact, it's a fact. But with alcohol, we cannot eliminate that, but we simply need to supply the unstimulated demand. We need to learn the lesson from that and apply it to marijuana. Is there alcohol in medicine? Absolutely. Look at your NyQuil. Right. It's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's like, how much is this going to cost us as a society? And how much are we willing to put up with? And now, we're willing to put up with a lot. $2 billion cost for the state of Iowa, problematic alcohol use. And I'm not saying we could eliminate it, but we could cut it in half. And we're out in front of marijuana at this point. But have we seen an increase in marijuana use in our clients out at Prairie Ridge? Well, sure. Because even though it's not legal here, they look at the paper, they see the news. When it's legal in Colorado and Oregon and Washington and Alaska for recreational purposes, what kind of perception of risk does that send me? Boom. So we're being affected by what's happening in other states, but I think this is still, you know, democracy. We do have some power here. I don't know how you would leverage that power, but that's up to you. Prevention works.
My question has to do with the pool of employable workforce. And I went to school in San Diego, graduated alongside people with the recommendation who were productive.
Oh, they had the little card, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it did get out of control as far as the pop-up number of dispensaries available.
Yeah.
It was more like candy stores than doctors. But a lot of my friends who actually had that recommendation graduated with good GPAs, were good at their jobs. Now here, I was kind of interested in what you said about the drug testing, that the water-soluble drugs will leave your system.
Right.
And if we're testing for all illegal drugs, we're going to not be able to hire people who have smoked within a certain amount of time, but we would have to hire people who could easily use meth or alcohol. Wouldn't
Absolutely.
the idea of a more permissive liberalization of that law then allow us to, if it were legal, we wouldn't have to screen for that, then for the marijuana, our pool would grow without having to, only because us as a tree service, all of our employee pool is risk takers. They're all,
Absolutely. I understand completely, yes.
But the idea of working alongside somebody who was drinking or using meth, even over the weekend, is really scary for me. But there's less ways to detect it. It's kind of it almost seems like, well, couldn't we just, if it were legal, then we just focus on the ones, like you said, the alcohol having more violence, more, the crimes associated with the use of these other things.
Well, I see exactly what you mean, and there's some businesses that are afraid to test for marijuana and that they won't have anybody to hire. Right, okay, but here's the thing, I mean, and this is what I know about this, teaching my impaired driving class. If I have a .10 blood alcohol level, is that some astronomical blood alcohol level? I mean, am I like wildly drunk, or, and I hate to use the term, is that kind of a normal drunk? 0.1.
It's just a,
Yeah, I'm just over the
It's a
legal
number.
limit by a little bit, right, okay. But statistically, and there's a ton of statistics, I'm 6 times more likely to die in a fatal car accident, okay? If we look at people who have 5 nanograms per milliliter of THC in their blood, which is, and all I'm gonna say, it's the same amount of toasted, you know, it's a different thing, but it's about the same amount of impairment. They're 6.6 times more likely to die in a car crash. It's about the same. Marijuana impairment is impairment too. So if I say, well, we're not gonna test for that, I might as well have people come into work, you know, at .10 blood alcohol level, because impairment is impairment. It doesn't make
We
a
don't
difference.
want
what
anybody
impairment.
coming to work on any drugs.
There you go.
But just what tools are available for us.
I understand, you have to make some
discern.
compromises.
Can
I think what you're saying though is because of the length of the time that the marijuana stays in your system, how long is the impairment in your system? Let's say if somebody is, I mean, does the level stay there where your alcohol goes out of your system, you know, within a relatively short period of time? What is the length of time that?
You're impaired from the THC.
Right.
Okay. There's two things that are confusing about THC simply because we get two different ways to test it. We use UAs, urinary analysis, and a blood test, okay? The THC in my blood is what is impairing me. I could have a ton of THC in my urine, that's not impairing me. The THC in my blood typically will last for 6 to 7 hours. So I smoke a little bit, 6 or 7 hours later, I probably don't have much THC level in my blood. I'm probably not impaired. Now I will test positive in a UA now for a month, for all practical purposes. So it has some lingering impairment. The classic experiment on this is they took commercial airline pilots, real commercial airline pilots. They had them come into, the United States Navy has flight simulators, as you can imagine, so they're not flying a real plane. And they land the plane and they said to these commercial pilots, listen, you guys are professionals, we want to see how close you can come to putting your nose wheel right on the center line of the runway. So these guys were professionals and they did it perfect, they showed them. And so then they said, come out here, and they all had them smoke marijuana, same amount, all of them. Have them come back in there, land again. The average was 20 feet on either side of the line while they were high, okay? They had them come back in 3 days. And they said, do it again. And that wasn't 3 days. It was the next day. They had them come out 1 or 2 days later, and they didn't smoke again. They said, no, you did this totally sober, you did it when you were stoned, and now we want you to land the plane again today. And they landed on average 10 feet on each side. Okay, so you go, well, it's a lingering impairment. But here's the kicker. They asked them, you've done it 3 times, which time did you do the best? Because they didn't tell them what the results were. And almost universally, they said they had done it better the 3rd time.
And what did they get the first time?
Right on. First time. 3rd time, 10 feet off on either side. But they said, which one do you think you did best? And they go, well, I think probably did best the last time. They still perceived they were fine. See, that's the thing about tolerance, is what we're talking about, is tolerance makes me believe I'm fine.
Well, the other question though is, what about the people that were getting stoned every day and coming in? You know, if you take any of us and go out and get us wasted, go out to the bar and get wasted, and then go do anything that we're used to doing on a normal basis, we're not gonna do well. But if you take someone that goes out and they drink a couple of drinks every day, and they're used to working, used to doing their job, you know, they probably do just fine.
Like state
Right.
dependence.
Well, perfect. That's exactly what it's called. It's called state-dependent learning. If I learn to bowl when my blood alcohol level is like 0.08 or 0.1, and then now a month later I'm sober and you say to me, hey, let's go bowling. Do you know how to bowl? And I go, oh man, do I know how to bowl? I'm a bowling machine. And I get up there, gutter ball, gutter ball, gutter ball. I go, hey, bring me a beer. And I have a drink, a drink, a drink. When I get back up to the same blood alcohol level that I learned to bowl at, I start bowling straight, spare, straight, spare. It's called state-dependent learning. It's real. I am better when I am doing this at the same blood alcohol level that I learned it. So it is definitely possible for somebody to be really good at something when they're drunk or high, if they learned it when they were drunk or high. That's absolutely true. That's a possibility.
And so there's some people that already drink or smoke during the day, and for those people in the labor pool, that's not going to change for those people. They're still going to come to do the job as CEOs of some of the companies, the employees of some of the companies. Those people, nothing's going to change. And so I guess I wonder how much is going to change when this becomes legal, because it will become legal someday. But how many fewer people are we going to imprison because they had an ounce of weed on? How many millions and billions of dollars are we going to spend less? You know, we've got some really good people up in some of our federal prisons that could be taxpayers, but we're imprisoning them instead.
Well, 80-some% of the people in federal prison for drug-related charges were in prison for selling. Okay. I mean, if I have an ounce of marijuana on me, I'm not gonna end up in prison unless my attorney is an absolute knucklehead or whatever. But the question is, do we want, people functioning at our workplaces when they're impaired?
Well, that's kind of my concern about that, because when I think of a smoker of cigarettes, anybody that I know that smokes, other than when I used to smoke, I had amazing willpower, I got years ago. They are gonna have to go out at lunch and have that cigarette, or when they get home, they're gonna have to have that cigarette. It's not the same with alcohol. I mean, you can drink and then maybe not drink for a month, for a lot of people, most people that I know. But when it comes to marijuana, people that I know that do marijuana, they want it in the morning, they want it in the afternoon, they want it at night. To me, it's similar to cigarettes, not similar to alcohol. So I could really see it, especially in my line of work where it's life and death, where people would want, if we hired somebody that regularly used marijuana, they'd want to do it during the day.
Well, I don't know if I have a particular comment on that, other than the fact the delivery system of the marijuana gives me such a rapid and profound mood change. You're right, the average alcohol user does not and will not ever have a problem. 70% of the drinkers drink 10% of the alcohol. 30% of the drinkers drink 90% of the alcohol. Right, so the 70% of the people that you're talking to, I can drink once in a while. I don't know how that is with marijuana. I'm sure that people can smoke a joint once in a while. There's got to be, there's a whole range of use, and there's got to be people that can do that. The only thing is they're still at risk for failing a drug test at work or whatever. If there's an accident at work and then they have to be drug tested, they will test positive. It will have some work ramifications. I can have negative consequences from my drug usage without being impaired. I mean, I could. If I have somebody else's prescription drugs in my pocket out at Prairie Ridge, I'm fired. But I wasn't taking them. It doesn't make any difference. I was possessing them. I'm still fired. So, it's not necessarily about whether I come to work drunk or high. The laws are basically to send a message. Isn't that what laws are about? They're a suggestion.
So say that we randomly test people for marijuana, just like we do for alcohol right now. If you had somebody get tested like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, do you see it being where it could be a blood test where you would know right now if they've used in the last 6 or 7 hours?
Hair, probably. Well, but that wouldn't say right away. If she's talking 6 or 7 hours, they use the hair for like long term, I used it 3 weeks ago or a month ago.
So we don't want urine, because urine is gonna be.
And in Iowa, they can't use hair testing for employment things, it's only other applications.
Well, I would use I wouldn't pick out marijuana. I would just, have your drug policy at work, defend yourself against all the common psychotropic drugs.
But I'm saying if it gets legal and businesses have no recourse.
Yes.
Can we resort to a blood test because we can say you can't be falling down on the job?
Well, wouldn't you be able to do a sobriety test,
Like a field sobriety test kind of thing?
Symptoms of.
Yeah, but the state of Iowa will very specifically then, see that again, state law will have to change. Because Iowa 730.5 is so very specific about alcohol testing, so very, very specific what you can do and can't do. And if it becomes legal for recreational and medicinal purposes, that is marijuana, the Iowa Code 730.5 will have to adapt to that, and will have some very specific regulations that you will have to follow, and they may or may not include blood testing, because it specifies what you can do with alcohol and what you can't do.
Jay, what are the studies of, if it does become legal, that being the stepping stone to the methamphetamine, the heroin?
Oh, okay, the gateway thing is a gateway drug.
And I think that should be a concern if it becomes legal.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, if it becomes legal, it's probably more of a concern now, and here's my thinking, of course. And so, I'm 15, I'm smoking marijuana, it's not legal, so who am I buying it from? Somebody who's selling marijuana, okay? Is that the only thing they're selling? Right, and so I'm used to doing something that's illegal, whether you're smoking cigarettes or smoking marijuana, because I'm underage. I'm okay with that, I get used to that, I don't really see any problem with that. Now, somebody proposes something else that's illegal, the guy I'm buying marijuana from says, I don't have any of this, but try some of this, okay? Well, I'm already comfortable buying from this guy. That's the gateway part. Smoking marijuana doesn't cause me to do anything, but using any psychotropic drug does this. I am learning that I can change the way that I feel by taking something. And if that's what I wanna do, I wanna feel up, I wanna feel down, whatever, there's a motivation to use something. And marijuana is no different than, in my mind, no different than anything else. I smoke this, I've determined, oh, it makes me feel this way. Now I have in my mind, it's okay to change the way that you feel by using something. And so somebody says, well, now you can try this and it'll make you feel like this. Well, I already do that, so what's the problem? There's, I think, the gateway effect. No using one substance doesn't cause anybody to use another. As people advance towards addiction, they do start to realize, they start to look for normal again. It's called a rebound effect. You know, if I'm drunk and then I sober up, my central nervous system doesn't just go, it's depressed, it's depressed, it's depressed, I go to bed, I'm normal. No, it goes whoosh, just like a pendulum does. And when I wake up in the morning, God, the lights are so bright and the noises are so loud, my central nervous system is jazzed. And so now I need to do something to get it back. I want to feel normal. Well, if my central nervous system is jazzed, what could I take that would push it back down to normal? Have another drink. So that rebound effect motivates me to use something to change the way that I feel. And that's where polydrug use comes in. I was surprised when I started work out Prairie Ridge, I didn't know wool from Sikkim about this, and I thought you were either addicted to this, or you're addicted to this, or you're addicted to this. No, polydrug use is the norm. And it's not that I start out that way, but as I start to use one substance, and now I've developed, and this is only when I've developed an addiction, I want to start to feel normal, and I can't get that, then I try to get this substance to get me back down to normal, or back up to normal, depending on what I'm using. But yeah, I'm not a big proponent of this gateway thing, but it does make me comfortable with doing something that's illegal. Now, when it becomes legal, then I won't have that motivation because I'm not doing anything illegal. But again, I will have learned that I can change the way that I feel. So I think it'll have the same effect that every other psychotropic drug does. If I really get into this and it makes me feel this way, I might try something else so I can feel this way. So in that regard, but I don't like to use the term gateway because boy, that gets a lot of resistance. People are just in your face because it is true. I smoke a joint, it does not mean I'm going to be slamming meth in the afternoon. That, yeah.
So wouldn't it kind of make sense if the dealers that people are buying their drugs from, you don't really know if it's safe, that, or if someone has spiked it in some way over time, that if you're buying it at, say, the liquor store.
If they spike it, they charge more money.
What's that?
That's how you know.
But the thought is if you went out to come and go and bought a joint, I mean, you'd expect that it would be consistent.
Pure,
They're
yeah,
not gonna
exactly,
try to
yeah.
sell you heroin
Yeah.
and come and go,
Yeah.
because they don't,
Right.
they're out of joints or whatever.
Yeah, well, that was the problem with Prohibition. So many people were dying because of the tainted alcohol. You know, who knew what was in it or whatever like that. So what, legalizations, but it hasn't standardized anything out because I heard that Dr. Joe Tsai, who's out right next to me, and one of the legislators asked her, well, in 32 ounces that it's legal to possess, how many doses are in that bottle? Now, this is the, nationally recognized expert on childhood epilepsy, and she said, I have no idea, neither does anybody else. She says you can get it out there, and she said you don't know what the concentration is or whatever. I mean, it's maybe pure CBD. How much THC is there in it? I don't know. I don't know how many doses are in there.
You mentioned earlier that you have, you talked to users who said, well, I'll just move to Colorado.
Yeah.
So if people are unwilling to quit based on laws or employability,
Right.
then, and our, once again, the concern, the pool, but then I also wonder if, doesn't Iowa, Mason City in particular, have a problem with retaining our youth residency here? A lot of people are moving away and not coming back anyway, and not all of them are going to be car thieves or violent offenders. Shouldn't we, it's the idea that if a place has absolutely no entertainment value, and then there's this other place that it's a permissive culture and all kinds of things to do, are we kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by letting everybody move to these states?
Well, here's the way I would look at that, okay? Because I'm pretty familiar with the stages. If I am willing to move to keep smoking marijuana, what is my relationship to marijuana?
It's probably a habitual to addictive.
Exactly. And so that's who we would be losing. I mean, if I'm not gonna live here. If you can't smoke marijuana here, I'm moving, and I'm willing to go through all the pain and discontent of moving. I
What
probably
about
do.
the students who just have more fun in Colorado and don't move back
Mhm.
after they go to, even if they don't smoke or not? It took a lot for me to decide to move back from California
Mhm.
because it's less judgmental of a culture in general. But there's a lot of value here for me as a professional. So
Mhm.
where do you draw the line?
Well, people make that decision themselves, but again, all I can think of is if I'm willing to move so I can use a psychotropic substance, that's a big deal to me, then if it's that important in my life, we call that at least psychological dependence, and as you pointed out, maybe addiction, and that's who's moving out, and that's not who's coming back, and they could have a certain cost to society. I mean, you cannot look at one situation. We could have the smartest, sharpest person in the world that would be a tremendous contributor to society, pay a lot of taxes, and he says, well, if I can't smoke weed here, I'm gonna move to California, or to Oregon, or whatever. Okay, gee, we wish we hadn't missed him, but what happens most of the time is the thing to look at, as an employer. I had a guy, who I will not name, pour some cement for me, and I had called him ahead of time, and he had come, and he had measured it, and later on, some people said to me, who you gonna have pour your cement? And I said the guy's name, and they said, oh, not him. I said, why? Oh my goodness, he's just hopeless alcoholic. And I said, really? He came when he said he'd come, he did a beautiful job. He came back when he said he'd come back, he cut it, he told me exactly what it would cost, and he sent me a bill for exactly, he could not have done a better job. Having an addiction, if in fact he did, does not disqualify somebody from being a capable, intelligent person. And the same thing with, I would imagine the same thing with marijuana too.
What about our unskilled labor force too? Like, if we, growing up in, I grew up here in fast food, worked in fast food, and it's pretty much all stoner high school kids work in fast food. Who's gonna flip our burgers? Who's gonna?
Okay, well, that all smoke. Okay, thank you for coming all that way.